All right, so today we're going to continue using trigonometry and an assignment in applications, or in other words, word problems. When we have a word problem, we're going to read that word problem, we're going to draw a diagram, and interpret information. Since we're dealing with right triangles, you're going to want to draw a right triangle. And then we're going to label our diagram, opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse, and figure out which trig function to use. Write our equation and solve. Now notice I drew a picture over on the right hand side. I have a person looking up at a hot air balloon. So you can see that person looking up has that angle of elevation. And that person in the hot air balloon looking down is the angle of depression. It creates that Z shape that we looked at before. So we have that hidden transversal making that angle 38. And this angle 38 alternate interior angles. And that's where I come up with saying that the angle of depression is congruent to the angle of elevation. 9 times out of 10, I like to use the angle of elevation even when they give me the angle of depression. So when you see the angle of depression, we're going to include it in our picture, but I'm going to move it to help me make the problem go a lot smoother. So in our first example, it says we have a flagpole that casts a shadow that is 137 feet long. The angle of elevation between the end of the shadow to the top of the flagpole is 25 degrees. How tall is the flagpole? So the first thing you're going to want to do is sketch out a picture. That picture should have a flagpole and a shadow. So you can see here is my picture. So here's my flagpole. My shadow's on the bottom. Now that 25 degrees is that angle of elevation. So here's my angle of elevation inside my picture because it's going upward. And it's telling me that we need to know the height of the flagpole. So you see I have X on my diagram and the shadow is on the bottom. So we're going to label our picture. Now remember, when we're labeling for trig, we're thinking about SOHCAHTOA. We're thinking about where our angle is. So our angle is at the bottom. So next to it, that 137 is my adjacent side. And across from it is my opposite side. So thinking back to SOHCAHTOA, which trig function am I going to use? Well, I have an O and an A, so I'm going to be using tan. So tan 25 equals opposite over adjacent, so X over 137. All right, so then we already have our equation. We're going to toss tan 25 over 1 to create our proportion and cross multiply. When we cross multiply, we're going to have 137 tan 25 equals X. So here I have X equals, after I put that in the calculator, about 63.8 feet. So that's how tall our flagpole is. All right, so I'm going to ask you to pause the screen. I'm going to ask you to try number 1, and then we're going to go from there. All right, so there's